One night recently, I was tinkering around, and the old Choose Your Adventure books was something that I really enjoyed as a child. So I wanted to create something similar but using AI. So with this, we can create our own different path. We can select different attributes of what we want this story to be like, as well as some objectives that we want to accomplish, and we can begin the adventure. And immediately, it'll start generating a story along with an image, and then it'll give us some choices. And all of these are AI generated. We can select what action we want to take, and then it's going to start generating more content, more choices, and another picture. And so in this episode, I want to kind of run through how I approach these kind of problems. I could open up my editor and then start planning it out, testing out integrations with the API, and then I could try running it. So in this case, I would just run the Ruby chat.rb, and I got an error. And so then I have to figure out where did that error come from. In this case, I had a wrong model, and then I could try it again, and then I get the response. I can then look at this response, and then I can try to get the actual content that I want. So I can dig through the choices. I can grab the first element. I can then get our message, and then the content. I can then save the file, run it again, and then I get what I'm expecting. But doing this in a Ruby file can be a bit of a pain. But I will reach for this sometimes. And then other times, I'll use something like Rapid API, especially if I'm working with a third-party API that I'm unfamiliar with. I figure if I could get it working within here, then I should be able to get it working within my Ruby code. So I'll try to make this kind of request, and then I get the results. But again, this could be very slow in iterating. And so then another way I like to approach it is using a Jupyter Notebook. And I've been using Jupyter for several years. And it's something where it's really easy to get started if you're using Python, but less so if you're using Ruby. So in this episode, we are going to focus on creating a Docker file that will give us both Python and Ruby, so that if we are wanting to create a Ruby script, then we're going to be able to do that without any issues. So we can execute this, and then we get our output, just like we would if we were using Python. And basically, a Jupyter Notebook is very similar to Google Colab, and this is what I use to create the Choose Your Own Path game. And the cool thing about Jupyter is that even though in this block, I'm setting a variable story response, and I'm digging through to get my results, I can use that in later blocks. For example, the next block, I have my Choose Your Own Story adventure, and then I tell it that I want to generate a stable diffusion prompt. And so I can run this, and then it'll give me a prompt. I can then feed this in, and then generate the image. And one thing that I really like about this is that as I'm working through and discovering with this, I'm able to quickly try out different models to see if I'm going to get different results, better results, or worse results, and it's really easy to iterate over. Whereas, if I just built this directly into my Rails application, it could be much more complicated. Depending on the feature you're trying to build, the time between responses could be a lot longer. Either you're queuing these in a background job, and maybe the background job isn't successfully executing like you're expecting it to, so you're having to go troubleshoot what that issue is, or a number of other problems. And so what we're doing here is extracting away all of the complexities of our Rails application and what we have built there, and then putting it into an executable notebook. But getting to this point could be a bit challenging. And so that's what we're going to be looking at in this episode today, is how you can set up your own Docker file and get Jupyter up and running on your local environment, so you can add another tool to your tool belt on approaching different API integrations or creating different kinds of proof of concepts. And did you know that you can go to railsstore.com to get your own Ruby on Rails t-shirt or your Drift in Ruby t-shirt? To watch this full episode and more videos, visit driftinruby.com and subscribe to the Pro membership.